Welcome to the Jaren Jarvis channel. I am Jaren Jarvis. Today, I would like to introduce to you, sometimes PTSD isn't the worst thing we come back with. After being sold by a smooth-talking recruiter in high school, I ended up being a line medic for an infantry unit in Iraq. I trusted my boys to keep me alive and they trusted me with the same. I like to think that nothing short of catastrophe would keep me from saving the man looking up at me from the ground, and we had a stellar record of minimal injuries. But no matter how good or trained you are, or you think you are, war is luck. And luck always finds a way to run out. There's a common joke that medics are always the motherfuckers that know how to kill just as much as we know how to save. I personified that to my boys, I guess. And in that desert the only clear rules were survive and save our wounded. So yes, I've taken many more lives than I've saved because the best preventative medicine is a dead enemy. The problem is we might not always have been the good guys because the pay was shit for sticking our necks out. Sometimes items would happen to go missing from a blasted out house with no one left to go back to it. We called them souvenirs, but they were mostly for lining our pockets when we got back stateside. Say what you want, it's the little things that keep your sanity in check. However, just like luck runs out, karma comes calling too, and that caught up with us at the same time we ran out of luck. We rolled up on a small village that we were told was holding a high priority target, an insurgent commander of some form or another. The brass said the info came from a trusted informant who'd helped us nail a few other guys, so we were expecting things to go smoothly. The wind started to kick up sand and dust which stings and bites worse than any insects on dismounted patrol. After a few minutes visibility started going to shit as the wind refused to die down. The sudden sandstorm mixed with the fact the streets were already empty before it started set us all on edge. We radioed back to the FOB to say we reached the village and that it looked like a goddamned ghost town, but on the other end there was nothing, not even feedback, then loud screeching static. Nothing like a hot mic and much louder than what should have been coming from the small hand receivers. A raspy voice came through as the static finished fucking our ears. "You should not have come here." A SSG picked up the mic and shouted into it, "Very fucking funny, I'll have you filling sandbags inside the wire for a week when I find out who the fuck said that." The line stayed dead for a minute and we weren't too keen on staying inside the VIX like a bunch of dumbasses since we still had a job to do, so we dismounted to brave the sand and dust and look for the target we came here for. We had walked into firefights and ambushes before, but something about this place felt off, and not just in the sense of it being a trap. It was like there was something unseen watching us through the screen of sand, and the silence being broken only by the whipping wind made the dull roar of the Humvees feel deafening. "Stay in sight of each other, can't see shit out here through this storm, so keep it tight," the SSG called out, but I barely heard him. My eyes had focused on a veiled figure rolling at the edge of my vision through the sand. "Doc, keep your fucking head on straight, we still have a job to do. You can daydream back with the fobbits later." "Right, thought I saw someone out there. Just the shifting sand, I guess." We broke off into two squads to start clearing houses. Knocked on the door to no response. Tried the door and it just opened, no sound of any wires or falling metal, so we were clear. First man looks back confused and slightly concerned. "It's a family, looks like they're all dead." We entered the house, more of a shack as it was, to a family of 2 adults and 1 kid kneeling on prayer rugs heads to the east. They hadn't been there long either. There was barely a stench of decay. The sandbox usually smelled like shit anyway, so maybe that covered it, but something was off about this. No blood, no signs of struggle, looked like they had just died in the middle of praying. Dead locals weren't our priority, so after a quick sweep we carried on to link up with the second squad. They had come across the same kind of scene, all occupants dead, heads to the east bowed in prayer and all dead within the last few hours at least. Every other little house was the same way. And all the while the sand churned and the wind whipped with greater intensity as we progressed further. We were all a little shaken at this point, and the hope that we would find the guy we were looking for ebbed away with each dead family we passed. There was one last place to check, the elder's hut in the center of the village. The temperature was usually a few degrees cooler inside than outside, but the room felt unnaturally cold, cold enough to make the hair on the back of my neck stand on end. 3 of them were in their abode in prayer but not to east. Their heads were all pointed to a solid gold box that was placed in the center of the room. The craftsmanship was beautiful, ornate carvings on each side and covered with Arabic script. The more peculiar aspect was the lid was sealed tight. Who knows what you do with the box? You can't put anything in, but it had to be 1,000 years old at the very least, judging by the wear and tear, which seemed pretty minor on an object so old out in the desert. With the whole village dead and no sign of our guy, we decided to call the mission a wash and were about to make our way back when one of the SPCs brought up the box. So we're just gonna leave this here? I don't think these guys would mind if we took it. A few small items here or there would go unnoticed, but a solid gold box would be hard to get back to the States. Then again, we were all pretty good with the supply sergeant and our deployment cycle was almost up. We'd be home in less than 2 months' time. For a little money he'd slip it into a connex, no questions asked. Something like that would catch a pretty penny if it got through the right channels. We could all get out at the end of our contracts and not have to worry about money for a long time. Chimed in a PFC. Some bickering occurred over what to do, but it was ultimately decided for us to take it. The thing was a lot heavier than it looked. That either speaks to the density of solid gold or maybe the weight of our misdeed was placed upon it. We made our way back to the Humvees, the sandstorm raging harder than it had when we entered the hut. Getting back was going to be a slow bitch of a ride if it kept up like this. We mounted up when I could have swore I saw the figure in the sand again. It didn't move and I could feel eyes fixed on me. I tapped the guy next to me and asked if he could see anything through the sand. He said I must have been going field crazy from all the time in the heat and that if anyone had been here they'd have been long gone by now. The platoon leader came on the radio calling back saying everyone in the village was dead and we had no trace of the guy we were supposed to bring back, but was met with silence. Storm must have been fucking with the singer signals or something. None of us were camo, so we started rolling hoping to get a message out when we cleared the storm. Visibility was even worse on the road, so we relied on the BFDs to get us back to the fob and keep us in some semblance on the road. We had finally cleared the sand wall when a ball of fire and shrapnel ripped under the lead vehicle and caught us all by surprise. We had just taken this way in, there shouldn't have been an eye on this road. The gunners scanned the area to look for anyone waiting for an ambush, but nothing came. My adrenaline spiked and muscle memory took over. Second vehicle dismounts were on the ground scanning and pulling security. I grabbed my aid bag and called for help getting the wounded out of the vehicle. Everyone but the gunner was torn to shreds. Whoever built the aid was a damn expert. It caused maximum damage to a damned up armor. The gunner's legs were a mangled mess, but he was alive for the time being. I pulled him from the gunner's hatch and tightened up tourniquets as fast as I could to stop the bleeding. I slid him down to a CLS waiting with a litter to bring him to the ambo. We loaded him in the back, the 9-line already sent out and a bird on its way to get him airlifted to a hospital. I stabilized as best I could, but he died in the air shortly after the handoff. I tried to not think about it, but the what-ifs and could-haves played in my mind for weeks afterwards. Morale had sunk low after that incident. Losing 5 men so close the end of a deployment always will. The ones who died in the initial blast were sent home to be buried and mourned by their families, followed shortly by the one who died in the medevac chopper. Those of us that were left made it home without incident. The report made it back about the dead villagers and was left to the locals to handle. When word got back to us, they said they went to clear out the bodies for proper funerals, but the entire village had been empty, with none of the bodies found and no graves near the village to speak of. Things didn't get much better stateside. Everyone who had been in that village that day died within a few months of each other. 2 were headed back from a bar not far off post when they were struck by a drunk driver and killed instantly in the crash. 1 was in the wrong place at the wrong time and was shot trying to be a hero, trying to stop a gas station robbery, while another had turned to the needle and died of an overdose with his eyes wide open, clutching a note with the only words scribbled down saying, "I'm sorry we took it." The last to go was solved his guilt with 9 mm of lead through his skull. He didn't leave any note, only a video recorded on his phone that was found propped up on a nightstand, still recording when he was found. The video was of the window facing out of the bedroom with a street light in view while he sobbed uncontrollably off camera, begging to be forgiven for his failure. When the gun went off, the street light happened to lose power and the muzzle flash briefly showed 2 shadows illuminated on the wall. A brief investigation was conducted, but foul play was ruled out as there was no physical evidence of anyone else being in the room or house found. I'm the only one left, and I ended up being in possession of that damn gold box. If you noticed, I haven't used anyone's names. It's not to protect the identity of the deceased. I can't remember their names anymore. The therapists have chalked it up to PTSD and my mind not wanting to remember who they were, lest the guilt break my psyche. I never got rid of that box. I can hear all their muffled voices calling to me when I'm laying in bed in the late hours of the night, struggling to decide if the nightmares are better than hearing my old friends beg to be let out or to join them in death as the night eats away at what's left of my mind. When the rain and fog cover the streets outside of my house, I look out and see a figure on the edge of my vision, shifting and almost indistinguishable, as if moving through sand. The gun next to my bed feels more alluring every night, but I can hear the rain hitting the street and my roof. Tonight I'll just embrace the cold grip of the nightmares and get some sleep.